this is even before you, Harry, but like I've seen enough Trackman sessions from Xander, but like, and the nice thing about these reports is you can see like where he tried to hit a draw. I mean, you can tell like when the attack angle gets shallower, the club path typically kind of goes in from the ends, to end to out. You can see the spin rates drop because that's obviously where he's trying to hit draws. The carry number goes up, all that fun stuff. You can see where he's right on top of it trying to hit it straight, and you can see the ones where he's trying to swipe across it, and hit kind of a cutter. The spin goes up, the path goes left, the attack angle gets steeper. So, like again, and I go back to what I remember his numbers being a club head speed. And if we're talking about 8-iron, club head speed, I would say with an 8-iron for him probably increased 2 miles an hour since the old swing. I think he was in the high 80s, I think, before with an 8-iron. Spin, he's always spun it, so that's never been really an issue. He's always been on the higher side. Like Harry said, he's anywhere between plus or minus 300 RPMs, with the number of the iron.
What ball does he play, Johnny?
He plays a Chrome Tour dot, which is a kind of a higher spinning, lower launching Chrome Tour. But like if you look at his dynamic loft and his overall delivery, look, those numbers are pretty consistent. What you see though is when he makes a bad swing versus like what because you could tell when he was really underneath it before, those numbers are now non-existent with the Como swing. So like that's where I see these swing changes really kind of, especially when you start to get to the longer stuff. When you looked at his sessions before, you might see 10 swings, you'd see 7 really awesome numbers, and then 3 like, what the hell are these doing here? And that was typically when the club would get stuck behind him or something would happen. And and Harry and I have stood there enough when Xander's not feeling so awesome and kind of half-assing it out there, like
the 8-irons that I think are in that data set. I did the math on it last night, and like you just mentioned it a couple of minutes ago, but kind of a good rule of thumb to start with, right? For maybe an average ball striker would be whatever the loft is on your iron, 2/3 of that would be a really good dynamic loft, right? Kellen, for Callaway, has told me 60%, so that's a little bit less, maybe call it 6% less. If you look at Xander's dynamic loft there, I think I did the math on it. I think it's like 57, 56%. So I mean, he is really leaning, the shaft there and ability to kind of control his low point, but kind of came from his strength, and that's why he's able to hit it kind of as far as he does. And to your point, Jake, it's a matter of managing your dynamic loft and your attack angle, which at Trackman we just call spin loft. And if you can kind of measure that and maintain it, over the course of time, you're going to become a better ball striker, or you're going to become a more consistent ball striker if you can kind of manage your spin loft relationship.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite Trackman buzzwords is spin loft. So can you go into that for a second? Because spin loft is, if you understand it well, or you have a fitter that understands it well, can be everything, right? Like that can be your North Star for a lot of people. But it can also, if you misunderstand spin loft, it can be a really quick detriment to your fitting and your understanding of your equipment, because it's one of those things where it's like you either kind of get it or you don't get it. And if you don't get it, don't use it. Like just leave it off to the side. So can you walk us through just real quick, like whether it's Xander or somebody else, or just an average 10 handicap or whatever, talk about spin loft a little bit, why that number was developed within the Trackman system, and then why that number has become to the right people, why that can be kind of a North Star for your fitting as you go throughout the bag.
Yeah, so spin loft is, the difference between your attack angle and your dynamic loft. So, dynamic loft minus your angle of attack. So if you have an iron that's with a dynamic loft of, let's say, 21 degrees, and your angle of attack is going to be 5 down, let's say, your spin loft becomes 26 degrees. And so as you manage those two numbers, the closer you bring them together, the less spin that you impart on the golf ball, and the wider that you increase that. And you can either do that by, adding dynamic loft and also steepening your angle of attack. That's going to create more spin. Now you can keep this relationship and just point it further down or further up, which then will change launch conditions. So the ability to maintain kind of, at the end of the day, we're iron play and really golf in general is just about controlling your distance, right? So if you can kind of maintain this relationship here, whether you have it this far apart or this far apart, your ability to control your spin loft is also ultimately going to help control your distance control.
So for people at home or listening, watching, whatever,
Yep.
talk about how that works against, and validates or invalidates straight up launch angle, which, so like I mentioned before, right? I think there are some ball characteristics that I would consider, quote unquote, static versus dynamic. I think of launch angle as a static flight measurement, right? Like obviously, again, it's flying, it's not a static thing, but I consider that a static measurement because of something like spin loft. The launch angle doesn't always tell the story, right? So talk a little bit about that connection, and then, because I think people in their mind, the first thing they're going to say is, well, what's launch angle then, right? Like, so just give us the difference there.
Yeah. So the between launch angle and spin loft, you're saying? Yeah. So launch angle is basically just going to be the angle at which the golf ball is leaving the club head, right? And creates the angle at which it's taking off. The spin loft is going to be the club delivery into the golf ball. So the angle of attack as it works either down into the golf ball on the arc or working back up, which is typically what you see, obviously, of the best drivers in the world, right? Long drivers are going to be hitting more up on the golf ball, and they're also probably going to be leaning the shaft a little bit. So that's why you see long drive guys play, 4-degree drivers, right? Is like pretty common loft, I would say, in the long drive world, maybe 2.5, right? So if you minimize the spin loft ratio, right, you're sitting way up on it with no loft presented. If you can get that launch angle to point, if you can get the spin loft basically point up this way, the launch angle is going to go up. But because the spin loft relationship is so narrow, it's not going to have a ton of spin on it. And that's why you've got a ton of guys, like long drive guys, hitting it 6 miles in the air, right? 380 in the air with no spin. But obviously, when you're playing on tour, you don't want to just max out those two parameters to hit it 380. You want to be able to have that kind of those numbers in a window that which you can control. And to my point earlier, spin is your friend,
Yes.
And that's something that is going to help you find more fairways, make your distance control a little bit better. So if you can kind of control the delivery of the club into the golf ball, whether you're hitting 4 up on it or with driver, or you're hitting 2 down on it with driver, if you can, as long as you can kind of control that and the amount of loft that you present at impact, it's going to lead to just more consistent distances, really.